Welcome back. I'm Sandy LaBelle, and this is the second of a three-part series designed to have students cooperatively on task within seconds of the class start time. In the first video, we talked about how to create that classroom environment so students can easily make the transition from the hubbub of the hallway to the learning environment of our classroom. In this second video, we're going to focus on a specific activity that can be used every day so students will be cooperatively on task within seconds of the class start time. We'll finish up with the third video with some of the most frequently asked questions that I get from participants after making a presentation. In this second video, we're going to focus on the 3 to 5 minutes when class very first starts, so you can have students cooperatively on task and have time for your administrivia. And that's a big stress reliever for you. The students will cooperatively be on task because they're going to know, if I try, I will be successful. And that there's a way that class starts every day that they can count on. And that's a big stress reliever for them. This second video is going to begin with 30 seconds before and 30 seconds after a Teaching Smarter class begins. So you can see for yourself how smoothly this technique works for starting your class with the students on task within seconds of the class start time. As a side note, every class is a little bit different in its personality. And this particular class, we had one chair that had a wheel on every leg, and the students really liked the wheelie chair. So as you're watching this 30 seconds before and 30 seconds after, take a look at the techniques that are used, and you'll see the wheelie chair. And then I'll share some specific techniques, some student samples and examples, and a summary chart. Let's begin. Okay, class is starting. As we watched this short video together, we heard the music before class started. We saw the students going to their consistent spot, the table at the back of the room, to pick up their papers. We heard the respectful reminders of how much time was left before class started. And when class started, the music was turned off and an on-purpose announcement made, class is starting. Then the overhead was turned on and we began the activities of the day. Now we're going to take some notes, take a look at some notes on slides, and take a look at student samples and examples. The first activity every day is called early work. Now early work may be similar to something you're already using in your classrooms. However, there are probably some significant differences, so please stay with me till the end of the tape and then we can make the comparisons. Students will be cooperatively on task within seconds of the class start time. To achieve this goal, we need to have two things. We need to create the before class starts routine as described in video 1, and we need to start the class with a WIIFM activity every day. WIIFM stands for What's in It for Me. From the previous video about how to create the before class starts environment and taping that we just saw, the class started when the teacher announced class is starting. A question for the day was then revealed. There are specific details for this activity, which I'll get to in a moment. This first classroom activity needs to be consistent. I call this the power of predictability. The purpose of the early work is to have students cooperatively on task within seconds of the class start time. It's not a stump the stars question, it's not a test question. This purpose can only be achieved when the students know, if I try, I will be successful. And if they receive a positive pump every day when they pick up the previous day's early work. We also need this activity to be easy for us to create and easy for us to grade every day. And we need to make it educationally significant. Here's how we do that. The early work consists of a long question with a short answer. Now usually as teachers we're used to doing just the opposite, but we want to focus on the fact that the early work is going to be a long question with a short answer. The question needs to relate to something that we've already recently learned or something we will be working on that particular day. In order to get the 5 points possible, the student needs to copy the whole question. Here's a sample or example of an early work question. The first example says, tell me the 3 types of plate boundaries we took notes on last class. So this would be an example of a question about something we did the class before. Or if you want to prepare the students, you might do something like, look on page 252 and write the chapter title we will begin working on today. By doing that, the students have their books open, their pencils out, their papers out, and by the time early work is over, they're ready to get into that first activity of the day with a smooth, seamless transition. The next slide will share an example of one student's early work paper. Students can put more than one day's early work on one paper. Please also notice that I use a different color pen to correct each early work. This provides a challenge for anyone who might want to mark their own scores on their paper. When students pick up the previous day's early work from the prearranged before class paper pickup place every day, they see that 5 out of 5 score and they're positively motivated to do it again. In one class, we had periods 1, 2, 3 one day and 4, 5, 6 the next. So in one class, I would have a 103-minute class period and then a 15-minute break, and then the next class would start. So during that break, I frequently had the music playing, and I'd be sitting at my desk correcting a few papers. This one young man walked in who was not at all like someone you might want your daughter to date. He was very alternative looking and had kind of a hard shell. He went back to the table, picked up his early work, shook his head, and said, "Wow, 3 perfect scores in a row. I've never gotten 3 perfect scores in a row in anything." And then he sauntered over to his desk, put his paper down, and walked back out into the hallway to talk with friends. The soft inside to the hard outside shell. He was 17 years old, and he had never gotten 3 perfect scores in a row. So be aware, they might come at you. The same person who might not do a 40-point homework assignment will be very adamant if they get a 4 rather than a 5 on early work, because early work might be the only place they've ever been perfect. Students will ask, do I have to copy the whole long question? Here's a great way to answer that question. You don't have to do anything, but if you want the whole 5 points, you'll want to copy the whole question. The your choice part of that answer is so powerful. Now, you may be thinking, do I have to grade the early work every day? Yes, you do. And it shouldn't take you any more than 2 or 3 seconds per student, or about 60 seconds a class. If you're spending more than 1 minute correcting each class set, reevaluate the rules of creating the early work. I don't put the scores in the grade book until students complete 10 early works. This is another reduction of teacher stress idea. I grade the early works every day so that students can pick up that positive pump every day before class, and they're further motivated to be cooperatively on task when the class start time starts. But it would be way too much work to record that every day. So instead, we have an on-purpose activity in class to create what I call the early work packet after 10 days have been completed. Here's what mine might look like. This is an actual cover sheet from a packet that we created early in the school year. What I ask the students to do is take a look at all your previous early works and think of a 3-word or less title for your early work. Record the date and the score you got. Total it all up out of 50, staple the cover sheet to the work, and turn it in. Since it takes about 3 times for a learning to stick, students have 3 opportunities to learn from the early work. First, they copy the question and answer it. Second, they see the information again when they pick up their paper and see their scores the next day. And third, they see it again when they create the cover sheet. As you can see, for the cover sheet, they have to revisit each question and give it a 3 words or less title on the cover sheet. Then they get another positive pump when they total up their scores and turn in the packets. Most have high scores, and they might be some of the highest scores they're going to get that day or that week. The early work daily paper is attached to the cover sheet and turned in. Now I enter the grades into the gradebook. Students will need 3 to 5 minutes at the start of every class to complete this task, and you will need only about 2 seconds per student to grade it. And there you have it. In the video, I've showed you how to use the first 3 to 5 minutes of class to create the quiet time with your students cooperatively on task every day. This is also a way to have a few minutes to do your administrivia and even take a few deep breaths or two to relax before you begin the creative part of your time with the students. Never underestimate the power of predictability. Students want to know what's going to happen first thing, and then you can get as creative as you want to for the rest of the day. Once again, I shared what we will learn, I taught the lesson, and now we're going to have a summary of what was learned. Early work facilitates the transition from the hubbub of the hallway to the learning environment of our classroom because there is always at least one paper to pick up at the consistent spot before class starts. This gives the students a reason for being there just a little bit early. The students are cooperatively on task within seconds of the class start because they know what to expect in the first 5 minutes of class every day, and they know, if I try, I will be successful, and this reduces their stress. We have time for our administrivia and some time for taking a calming breath before the lessons of the day begin, and this reduces our stress. By using Teaching Smarter and the early work activity, we can all experience a positive class start every day. With early work, the power of predictability is at work. And the early work is easy for us to create and easy for us to correct. This positive feeling tone that's created by the early work will spill over to the rest of our class time together. Early work tricks students into trying. I want to tell a couple of stories here about this slide. The positive feeling tone that you get from early work is one of the critical pieces to early work. I had a math teacher come up to me one time after one of my presentations, and she said, you started talking about early work, and I was like, yeah, I already do that. But then you started talking about the positive pump to start every class, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been starting every day with a negative pump. You see, I corrected the papers from the previous day's work, and whatever they were a little sketchy on, well, I made that their warm-up. And so I was starting every day with failure. And then I was wondering, gee, why are these kids so sour? Why don't they want to try? So the positive pump part is very powerful for the early work. The tricking students into trying. When I first started teaching, it was striking to me how many students had kind of a dead look in their eye, like, you can't make me try, I know I'm going to fail. I'd rather not try and fail than try and fail. So early work gets them to try because they know if I try, I will be successful. And that's an important beginning because if they try on your early work, they may try on the other activities of the day as well. This ends the second video of the 3-part series. In the third and last part, I'm going to address some of the most frequently asked questions as I make keynotes and ballroom presentations at state and national conferences, or at seminars that I make at individual school districts or schools. Now we're going to share some contact information if you want to order a book or perhaps arrange for a presentation. If you're not interested in contact information, just close your eyes, take a few deep cleansing breaths, and enjoy the relaxing music. And I'll see you next time.